Can bite it like it. How are you? And how are you, ambient hell? I just want to take some time to maybe talk to you guys, answer some questions, maybe get a bit of information out there. So if like you have any questions that you want to ask me, let me know. There's stuff you want to know, or there's something you want to discuss with me. Let me know, and I'll do that. I don't know why your dad left. That doesn't really have anything to do with what I was talking about. But there was something that I wanted to talk about. Um, some more YPG people are giving me, like just some idiot was giving me shit for not supporting the YPG, and then you lives in his mom's basement, just internet, blah blah blah, which is really funny coming from a guy who is just on the internet, and I very clearly don't live in my parents' home. And okay, it's funny. He's just being an insulting little shit because I don't like, I don't care to support the YPG. Here's what I think is so funny. They're saying, oh, Mao allied to blah, 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 so you're just a hypocrite. But the thing is that this accusation, which has been thrown at me a couple times, doesn't make any sense. You see, Mao allied with other Chinese to push out imperialists. Like, I don't get what they're not understanding. The communists allied with the nationalists to push out the imperialist Japanese. The YPG is allying with imperialism, U.S. imperialism, to bring imperialism into the country. I don't know why the YPG fanboys don't seem to understand that and try to point to Mao as some kind of hypocrisy on my part. It doesn't make any sense. Like, they're not. I mean, aside from the fact that it's an appeal to hypocrisy, it's two completely different things, and it really doesn't make sense. So, what's the point? But I mean, they're already fairly, ideologically bankrupt to begin with. So it's not surprising that he would particularly resort to calling me names and throwing insults in order to deal with that kind of criticism. I think it's perfectly fair to point that out, even if the YPG fanboys don't like it. Often the YPG uses the kind of using the Rojava women in, using attractive by Western beauty standards, using them as propaganda, why you should support them. I mean, aside from the fact that it doesn't really make any sense and it's sexist, that's literally what Israel does. Like, they just show off, oh, here's our attractive female soldiers, so you have to support us. And these people who are supposed to be Marxist are throwing, this kind of thing around as propaganda. Like, it doesn't make any sense. You're literally just being sexist. So, and I mean, even racist at the same time, because they're using Western, like European style beauty standards. And I think it's just so bloody nonsense. It's like there's really no principle here. It doesn't make it doesn't make any sense. the kind of thing is that when you're supporting the Rojava, it's not really a it's not a principled position, because it's justify everything, not form an ideological core. It's kind of a difference. It's not an ideological position, but rather just a justification for supporting one particular side. Now, FTW All Day says pro-government forces have teamed up with the SDF on multiple occasions. Yes, that's true. Particularly now, so now that the U.S. is not handing them cash and weapons and political support hand over fist. But that's completely irrelevant, given that the Kurdish forces are bringing U.S. imperialism into the country. I don't know what part of that is not getting through to them. At no point did Mao or the nationalists bring Japanese bases into the country. They pushed the Japanese out. They didn't bring the Japanese in. So what does it matter if the Kurds are, once in a while work with the Syrian government to fight ISIS? They are still shilling for U.S. imperialism. It's still there. And now, we've got reports that the Kurds are in negotiations with the Syrian government to... I'm not exactly sure. They don't really specify what the negotiations are about, but I'm guessing that it's about a possible future territory for the Kurds. And believe it or not, having a Kurdish territory is kind of in the interest of the Syrian government itself, as basically Syria is still worried about Turkey possibly invading from the north, and giving the Turkish forces, giving the Kurdish forces some kind of territory would be a nice buffer to help kind of prevent the Turkish forces from possibly invading. Keep in mind that Assad is not really on the side of Turkey. It's a very complicated political situation. They are still opponents in some regard. So basically, there is still room for a Kurdish state inside of Syria, or something to that effect. And I couldn't help but notice that the majority of the Rojava supporters are anarchists, yet they're calling for a state for the Kurds, which is the thing that they're supposed to be against, or the thing that is illegitimate. So there's kind of like a really ridiculous, I guess, a kind of hypocrisy there, or at least, this really runs into what I was saying about how this support for the Rojava isn't an ideological position. It's more like a justification for cheering something on. Now, again, for FTW all day, you're literally just ignoring what I'm saying. I have already answered saying receiving assistance from pro-government forces, and I've just said that. That literally does not justify bringing in U.S. imperialism. That's the key thing here that you're just blatantly ignoring in order to justify your position. You're not dealing with an ideological position, but rather making a justification. You just did it. Oh yeah, but they worked for the thing. So that's the whole thing right there. And another thing I wanted to, I was talking with some people the other day about conservatives and conservatism in general. Many people will point to conservatives and say, they're kind of like, conservatives don't have really positions that they're for, but positions they're against. But somebody was making the argument that in terms of conservatives, they don't really have an ideology. Like, conservatism is not like a real solid ideological position. It's more like kind of gotcha. Let's call them let's call it gotchaism. You notice that conservatives, that when they're talking like that, they don't have like a solid position that they support. It's like a ha, we got one on you. Like they support Trump, and rather than saying what it is that they believe in, it's just like, oh, Trump got them on this, or ha, Trump got them on that. I mean, a lot of conservatives stand for limited government, but yet that they turn around and cheer for the wall. They don't want the government in their lives, yet they turn around and basically want religion enforced by the state. I mean, ignoring the whole separation of church and state thing. So they say that, they talk about limited government, but then they turn around and advocate the government, get involved in all these kinds of things, because they don't really hold a position. Conservatism isn't an ideology per se. It's just like some things that they want mashed together that are ideologically inconsistent. And I think that's a real problem with conservatism in general, is that it's not really a solid thing, but more like, oh, there's this thing I like, so therefore. Like, you could see them completely blatantly contradict themselves on certain things, and it's like the contradiction doesn't even exist. Okay, look at this. Anytime Trump doesn't do what he said he was going to do, they completely turn around and then justify it. Trump said Mexico was going to pay for the wall. Well, that's obviously not going to happen. And then they completely just ignore it. Then it's the American taxpayers going to pay. When you point out that it's not going to be Mexico, all of a sudden they just turn. They just like, got you, lib. You're so mad. It's amazing. Now, with regards to the Blue Book and the John Birch Society, that's the John Birch Society's view, but it's not the view of conservatives in general. And even then, the John Birch Society is, well, it's almost like some conspiratorial nonsense. So I'm not saying the Blue Book is conspiratorial nonsense. I'm saying the John Birch Society in general has that certain, very much a flair to it. But I'm sure that the Blue Book maybe is an ideological foundation, but it's not the kind of, but it's not shared by like conservatives in general. So that's like really a problem with that. But one of the things that I was really noticing about Trump is that, and one of the things that a lot of conservatives, or more specifically the alt-right, can't seem to understand, is that Trump has completely backed himself into a corner. Look at this whole situation with the wall and the shutdown. Trump either capitulates and doesn't have the wall and loses a majority of support, or he continues the shutdown, alienating more and more people. His approval rating is dropping as a result of this shutdown. So he's damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't. So there's no way for him to win this. He really does have to just give up the damn wall. He's not going to get it. I mean, even politically, what he can do is turn around and just claim that the Democrats stopped him. Well, we would have had the wall, but the Democrats stopped us, and try to save face that way. I mean, that's basically all he can do. I mean, it's pretty clear by now that he's not going to get his wall, and that's just the way it is, and he just has to accept it. But I mean, that's a whole thing. Okay, here's a question. Hardcore libertarians say the best way to say, they say taxes are theft. You respond, so you don't want roads, and then they say you strawman them. Well, I guess technically it's kind of a straw man, because they believe that corporations will just pay for roads. I mean, that's stupid, and there's no evidence whatsoever to suggest that that's actually true. Now, here's the thing. In rare cases, corporations have paid for roads, but these roads went connecting from another road to their business. They were short. and they are not the road system that, first world, that developed countries have. These tiny little roads are not the, massive interstate highways, the roads that people use every day through a neighborhood. They're not there. They're not going to come out. So they're actually making a false comparison, not a false comparison, but they're making a fraudulent argument when they say, private companies will pay for roads. Well, no, they won't. And the example that they use are ridiculous, because there's a huge difference between paving, maybe 100, 200 meters into a business and a whole network of roads across the entire United States. I mean, it's just simply a fraudulent argument. The point is, if you want to live in a first world society, you're going to have to pay for it. This concept that these things will just pop up automatically out of nowhere, like companies, private companies will just pay for them, is like completely ridiculous. It's not going to happen. Nobody's going to pay for an entire interstate highway system. It's just ridiculous. And even then, say we have roads, and then somebody's allowed to have competing roads. Like, the idea of competing roads is so fucking stupid. It's just it blows my mind. Why would you be so bloody wasteful as to have more than one road doing exactly the same thing just so they could compete with each other in price or profits? Like, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And even then, that would be a complete nightmare on trying to plan an entire city. Of course, now you wouldn't have city planning. You would have complete bloody anarchy in where roads go, and what sections of a city wouldn't even be designated industrial, commercial, residential, etc. It would just be a crazy mishmash of basically everything anywhere. It's complete nonsense. Like, it's just a non-functioning thing. And since FTW all day can't seem to get over the imperialism fact, you're just painting a broad brush using terms like U.S. imperialism. What part of allowing U.S. bases inside of Syria isn't U.S. imperialism? What kind of broad brush is that? It's literally there. They are trying to balkanize the country for the sake of carving it up. Kind of like what was done with the Kosovo crisis, etc. Like, what part of that are you not understanding? How is that like a broad brush? Like, what? I'm specifically I'm referring to the specific things, the actions that the Kurds are taking in not just accepting U.S. support, but by paying them back in supporting their interests. I mean, it's right there. You just don't want to see it. It's blatant. Like, again, this is like a justification, not an ideological like theory or position. It's just nonsense. But anyway, let's move past the subject of the Kurds. Okay, Pol Pot says, what is a Euro-communist? See, again, FTW, now you're just being an idiot. No, you're just projecting your shortcomings upon me. What shortcomings? What are you talking about? I've clearly outlined what I was talking about. This doesn't make any sense. That a third world revolution, you should have been backing there. It's not a revolution. What part of that are you not understanding? Allying with U.S. imperialism is not a revolution. There's no Rojava revolution going on. You're not making any sense. This isn't projecting anything. If I said that it was a revolution and then criticized them for having that, then it would be right. It doesn't make any sense. So, you know what? Enough of your like complete nonsense. You're trying to poke at something to try to find something, rather than dealing with the fact that the Kurds are literally assisting U.S. imperialism. It was socialism or barbarism when I had that debate with them over it. the Kurds allying U.S. imperialism. I said they're literally helping the U.S. occupy Syria. This is imperialism. And he said, and I quote, and you can go to the video, see it. He said, and I quote, "I don't care." That pretty much says it all. He literally admitted that it's helping U.S. imperialism, and he doesn't care. So, okay, there you go. That's pretty much the end of that one. Okay, so Euro-communism, anti-communism. This is a work by Enver Hoxha that's actually pretty good, and it does point to a trend, well, not just a trend. I mean, it's still going on to this day, of communists basically saying, well, we're going to run in elections, and this was a thing that came up later on, and Enver Hoxha was very right to criticize this, and we do see this right now. It's a kind of thing. This happens, like, if you talk to any communist party who runs in bourgeois elections, they will tell you like the same thing. They'll tell you, why are you doing this? You know you can't win the elections, so like why are you running? Oh yeah, we're just doing this in the meantime until there's there's a revolutionary situation. Okay, so you're admitting that there isn't a revolutionary potential there. So that's why you're running in elections. No, we're not saying there's no revolutionary potential. We're just saying we know X population, isn't ready to do revolutions. So you're kind of like completely contradicting yourself. I mean, it's like they're admitting there's no revolutionary potential, but then saying that there's a revolutionary potential at the same time. I mean, you know that you're not going to win the bourgeois elections, and then turn around and justify, like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, they know there's not going to be a revolution, so they run in elections that they know they can't win. Okay, let me put it to you another way. A communist, see, again, FTW all day, a third worldist. Like, you would know third worldism better than me, which is like a laughable, would have backed up a third world revolution. It's not a revolution. The U.S. Army and the U.S. Empire is not revolutionary. Apparently, I have to tell you that. And yes, I am talking down to you because you are very clearly stupid. Because you're just resorting to appeals to hypocrisy that don't even make any sense, rather than having an ideological position, which is the problem to begin with. So, you know what? Enough of you. You're an idiot. You're done. Okay, no more wasting time on this guy. Shit, where was I? FTW. Mandatory 40% women representative councils. Okay, one, show me one of these representative councils that actually exists. Two, wow, there's women on the council, therefore it's revolutionary. And guess what? The CIA is filled with women running it now, therefore it's revolutionary. So, in other words, attempting to just completely ignore the fact that they're allying imperialism. Now you're trying to make justifications, which is the whole thing that I was talking about. You're not holding an ideological position. You're trying to make justifications for it. Oh, the Kurds are helping U.S. imperialism. Yeah, but there's like supposed to be 40% women on the councils. So therefore it's not U.S. imperialism. That's basically social democracy. Yeah, see, we reformed it so there's women on it. So therefore it's revolution. That doesn't even make it. That doesn't even make any sense. Dude, you're finished. You're so full of it. Okay. Enough of that guy. It's ridiculous. He's looking for justifications for allying with U.S. imperialism, not taking an ideological position. Anyway, fuck, where was I? Yeah, the Euro-communism. Yeah, basically, Enver Hoxha was right on that. That was a trend that popped up, and it's continuing to this very day. Now, I once pointed to how Enver Hoxha's criticism of Yugoslavia and Tito and somebody responded by saying, you don't like him on Mao, but you like him on Tito. What a hypocrite. So if I don't agree with him on Mao, and I've made a substantive argument against it, I have to automatically disagree with everything he's ever said. So that doesn't make any sense. By your logic, if I don't agree with him on the issue of Maoism and Mao, therefore I believe that he is wrong on absolutely everything that he has ever said. I mean, that's completely nonsense. That's just completely ridiculous. He was very right on some things, and he was wrong on other things. I mean, it's nuts. People, again, this isn't even an ideological position. It's like trying to poke things, trying to look for something to complain about rather than taking a solid position. I don't know. It's just a continuous problem. And I'd like to say that it's first worldism, but it really isn't. This is a problem that exists in a lot of parties. Okay, look at it like this. Right now, with the Philippine Revolution, CSUN, when Duterte was running for president and he was saying, yeah, I'm going to slaughter all the drug addicts and I'm going to commit genocides, CSUN was trying to have peace negotiations with him and literally referred to him as the Filipino Hugo Chavez. What the fuck are you doing? This doesn't make any sense. How is Duterte the Filipino Hugo Chavez? So basically, what we have is a situation right now where the Communist Party of the Philippines is denouncing Duterte as a fascist. I really wouldn't consider him a fascist, but let's just say for the sake of argument that he is a fascist. Why would you then be engaging in peace negotiations with him? Oh, it's just a strategic thing. Strategic what? You're talking about permanently laying down arms against a fascist. How is that not reactionary? Like, it doesn't even make sense. If you're opposed to fascism and Duterte is a terrible dictator and that's the thing that you're against and that's the thing you fight against, you're doing a revolution, why are you engaging in peace negotiations? It doesn't make any sense. So I'll tell you what I think Duterte, I mean, I'll tell you what I think CSUN is really doing. CSUN's getting old. Like, pretty old. Like, he's probably got maybe 5 to 10 years left before his health starts really failing and possibly even die. He's looking for something to cement his legacy and bringing the Philippine Revolution to a conclusion, a peaceful conclusion, would be something that he could use. That this would be part of something that he could hold on to. This would be his legacy for Philippine history. But what does that say about the revolution? I don't get how abandoning revolution is supposed to be revolutionary. It doesn't make any sense. So if Duterte really is the great, terrible fascist that he says he is, for the sake of argument, let's say that he is, although I think it's more complicated than that, why would you enter into peace negotiations with him? He's completely contradicting himself. His position doesn't make any sense. But when you see it in the context of him trying to defend a legacy or to create a legacy for himself, then yes. I mean, wouldn't the smart thing to do would be to turn over the revolution to a younger generation of communists who can carry on the battle? I mean, that's again, that's obvious. It doesn't need to be said. Okay. A lot of people here are talking about incels. Okay, I mean, technically there is an incel. If wasn't I'm trying to see if I can get a good definition of incel. Celibacy is something you choose. So you can't be involuntarily celibate because it's an oxymoron. You're just like, you know what I mean? It's like consensual rape. It's such a blatant contradiction. It doesn't exist. Okay, look. So women don't want to have sex with you. You know what? That happens to a lot of guys. It's fucked. And it hurts. It definitely hurts. But rather than trying to understand really why it happens, they're just getting angry at the women for not wanting to have sex with them. The problem is, you can't force relations between men and women. It's not something you can legislate. Like, you know what I mean? It's not something you can legislate into changing. It's something cultural that has to change. Well, they're saying the women don't want a man who's not like this really hugely attractive thing or isn't rich, etc. I mean, come on. It's capitalism that glorifies wealth, and money is access to resources, it's living standards, it's basically everything. And then when there are women who are judgmental of men based on how much money they have, what did you think was going to happen? Dude, that's capitalism. That's exactly what's going to happen. And there are men who are equally as judgmental of women based on their looks, and that is largely to do with media perception. The media perceptions that are given of people's attractiveness, both men and women, is completely skewed by the media. They are screwing it up. They show only these pretty people, these unrealistic beauty standards. They do it to men and women, and then men and women look at each other and they don't see the kind of person that they would be attracted to. I mean, it is a propaganda effect that is subconscious, but it works. We're both getting screwed by it, both men and women. But rather than understanding what it is that caused it, like looking at the problem and trying to determine the solution, they're just retreating inwards with their own inborn prejudices, which would be misogyny. So they feel it's a conspiracy by women to do that. I mean, which is utterly nonsense. I mean, I can understand why they would go there. I mean, that's the only tool in their toolbox, is feeling like a victim. So it must be some kind of conspiracy against them. It can't just be a product of an existing system. And that's where they make their mistake. Relations between men and women can work and they can be beneficial. But we do have to understand that to reject the kind of ID poll position here that gets ridiculous. Why do men see women as sexual objects? We're biologically hardwired to do so. Like, they get mad. Oh, this man sees this woman as attractive and wants to ask her out. That's how the species procreates. The male of the species is biologically hardwired to find the female attractive and want to have sex. And the inverse is also true. Women are biologically hardwired to be sexually attracted to men to procreate. So you can't get mad when that happens. Now, you can be mad at harassment. Harassment in the workplace, harassment on the street. Yeah, perfectly fine. And that should not happen. And that should be punished in trying to deal with a society. But getting mad at someone for being sexually attracted, it's just nonsense. I mean, it's just... You can't just throw away, what? Yeah, exactly. Lust is an instinct. It is an instinct. It's born into every single man. Harassment is bad. Being sexually attracted to women isn't bad. It's as about as natural as you can get. And for once, something actually is natural. But I think it is important to talk about incels because they are a problem. Their sexism is a problem. And what they do isn't just a problem, but it's also a product of the system that we're against anyway. So it's important to point that out. Thoughts on the Communist Party of India and the largest strike in history? Well, that's good. I support it. I don't know why you would really need all caps on that. So, obviously, I support it. So, natalism, what like antinatalism, like the nobody should have babies kind of thing. It's just like in it's oversimplification. So rather than dealing with the problem, which is the society, just get rid of people. Isn't this like the ridiculous argument that's made against Stalin? No man, no problem. I mean, it's just dumb. It's just easier to just say, oh, let's not have any kids and just not have people, rather than tackle the actual problem. It's nuts. And yes, society is full of lonely and alienated people. That's completely beyond any doubt. Of course that's there. And they're a product of the system itself. And unfortunately, due to alienation, it's like they either internalize it or they externalize it in ways that don't actually deal with the cause of the problem itself. I mean, it tends to individualize people. They either lash out at themselves, feeling that they didn't do something right or they're not good enough, or they lash out at the system that's causing the problem, not understanding why it happens and blaming others. I mean, it is individualism, but you can't really blame people for feeling that way. I'm saying that's the limitations of the incel ideology, and that it's not capable of grasping the source of the problem that would bring about the solution to it. Thoughts on the left communism and their claim that MLs of anarchists ignoring the role of commodity production in preparing and perpetuating the capitalist system? I would say that essentially Marx didn't actually lay out any real path to communism, because basically he didn't know how it was going to go. Keep in mind that most of his works, almost all of them, were criticisms of capitalism, not so much a description of the functioning and the path to the solution. That still has to be found. That still has to be dealt with. And even then, it kind of assumes that Marx would know absolutely everything about transitioning a society, something that didn't even take place in his lifetime. So there's going to be a gap between, the theory and practice, which is why Mao had that theory, practice, theory kind of thing. So I would say going on about, that particular aspect of commodity production is really kind of irrelevant, because what solution is there? The things that didn't work, or the things that just couldn't be tried because they're so ridiculous? We still do have to understand that the transitionary period is something that we're still experimenting with and still trying to figure out, rather than taking this kind of ultra left position of just saying, well, it should be this. Okay, how do we get to that? That's what we need to know. That's the difference between a utopianist view and a scientific view, is understanding the difference between where it is you want to go and how it is that you get there. So I think that's kind of an important question to answer. Marx didn't have all the answers. So I think that's kind of it's kind of a bit complicated in that kind of saying. What do you think happened when food stamps and other social programs will lose money? Um, when the food stamps run out, there's going to be a problem. There's going to be major, major unrest as a result of that. I don't think that the system will really let food stamps run out, because I think that the consequences of doing so are far too dangerous. In fact, I think Trump's extension of running the government for 21 days, what have you, is specifically that. And he knows that if you start having no food in America, you can't get the food, there's going to be a hell of a lot of trouble. There's going to be unrest that's possibly, pardon me, worse than what took place in the 1960s. So the bourgeoisie is not dumb. They know that this would be going too far. And even I think Trump, to a large degree, knows that that is a battle that the bourgeoisie cannot win. That would be pushing things directly into a third world level. It's just too dangerous for capitalism to let that happen. But yeah, if it were to happen, oh, that would be the would it be the end of capitalism? I don't think so. Because rather than risk letting a revolution happen, they would just bring food stamps back. So I don't think it would do it, because they can still do this, the social democratic reform that's actually still there. So I don't think it would be enough. But that would be the line. That would be crossing a line to where they'd start risking things. Even then, I don't think that this government shutdown, it could continue to go on, but I think Trump will keep going with agreements to continue go along with the having periods where he'll allow the government to have funding for a certain period of time and then go back to demanding his wall again. But there won't be a real continuous lockout like we've seen. Why is Jacques Fresco not to be considered a non-Marxist socialist? I mean, other than the fact that he literally rejects socialism. But he just said, like, if you watch the Zeitgeist Project, the movie, so I guess it would be Zeitgeist then, he said that socialism and communism have money. Like, communism doesn't have money. Like, what are you talking about? And again, he reduces everything to money itself, not the social relations behind money. So he is very anti-scientific in that regard. The thing with the Zeitgeist Project and people like Jacques Fresco is that they see what it is they want instead of capitalism. I mean, great. You know, if I could wake up tomorrow and the Zeitgeist Project was in full swing, the Venus Project was in full swing, and we had that techno-utopian society, dude, I would take it in a second. But that's not the way things work. You know, you have to transition to that society. You cannot suddenly break from one to another. There's going to be a transition period. Even then, they completely reject the idea of the use of violence. So they would have no way of even bringing that world into existence. They think that they're just going to appeal to people. I mean, if you watch the end of the third Zeitgeist movie, they have this big protest where I'm assuming everybody in the country just gets together and throws their money at the bankers, and then the bankers just pick up a phone and then just they give up. What? That's not how change has ever occurred in human history. Somebody just says, let's just stop because people don't like it. What the fuck? That doesn't make any sense. Like, it's pure utopianism. I mean, the utopia that they want is good. I mean, I would take it. But they have no concept on how to get there. And I think that's the main problem. So, again, this would go into the thing, it would go into about having the dictatorship of the proletariat and all that. I mean, like, if we just ended capitalism like that, how are you going to build all of that, build that whole society? you just like expect that truck drivers to work for free. Like miners will just keep mining even though you're not paying them. Like it's crazy. It's it'd be nice if that was the society we have, but there has to be some serious work on how to actually get there. Okay, what's going on here? How long have I been on? I've been on for about 45 minutes. So I'll give it a little bit more time. Would I be happy with a society with multiple modes of production that didn't get engaged in imperialism? No. I want socialism. I want socialism. I want communism. Could Jacques be considered a neo-utopian socialist? Yeah, possibly. I mean, it's hard to. I guess it'd be hard to say what a neo-utopian socialist actually is, but either way. Dan Uko, you're gonna copy the video. This is being recorded and will be available on the channel anyway. So as soon as I'm done here, YouTube will process the recording and leave it available on the channel, so it doesn't matter. What do I think of Made in China 2025? Honestly, I don't know anything about it. Yeah, I would still recommend my MTW book. Yeah, I think it is. So, yeah. So there's some things I wanted to talk about. I guess I kind of do have to go. Dude, am I bourgeoisie? No, but I would consider myself as a first world person a member of the labor aristocracy. But not really, bourgeoisie. Do you think imperialism eventually progressing to a global empire? I don't think so. I think that contradictions within the imperialist states will still cause enough of a problem that nobody will take a completely total hegemonic position. I mean, the United States had that when the Soviet Union came to an end, but I mean, they couldn't hold on to it. But yeah, you know what? I think that's pretty much gonna do it for now. Maybe I'll start up another chat sometime soon. But thanks for your questions here anyway, and I'll see you guys later.